of Tradcatknight, special guest exclusive podcast right here on the tradcatknight.org website. Today is March the 30th, 2020. I hope you all are having a very wonderful and blessed day. As always, we continue to keep the podcasting moving along with a very special guest today, Gearóid Ó Colmáin, who is a Catholic journalist. He's been featured all over the media, folks, and we're very, very honored to get him on a monthly basis to help break down his latest articles. You can find him. I'm going to encourage you all to go over to his Twitter account right now. It's at Broadford Soviet. That's at Broadford Soviet. And again, he's an independent political analyst. He's a Paris correspondent for the American Herald Tribune. If I'm not mistaken, he's got a new website too as of last month or two, so we can get that out to the public. We're obviously going to be talking about coronavirus and his perspectives on that. He's got an interesting story to tell us. But before we do that, we got to get into the sponsors. And again, get over to jacksberry.com, which is a Catholic website and service dedicated to the teaching of the virtues, evangelization, strong devotion to the Immaculate and Sacred Hearts. There's many saint quotes, prayers, articles posted throughout the week to help keep souls on the straight and narrow in this severe crisis in the church. Please visit John Dean's jacksberry.com. There's a prayer request page. Please make sure that you are supporting John Dean. He's done an awful lot, especially along the lines of gift subscriptions to individuals. We also have another sponsor, DrDeanConsulting.com. He's a consultant worthy of the title with an outstanding background in career management, recruiting, college relations, teaching, human resource development, succession planning, and human relations. That's DrDeanConsulting.com. Along the right-hand side of the Tradcatknight, you can see all of our sponsors, folks. And last but not least is PhysicalTherapyFriends.com. And it's a website dedicated to helping the community in terms of physical abilities, pain, increasing quality of life through education and personal recommendations at no charge whatsoever. They can help with back pain, neck pain, knee pain, in addition to helping loved ones improve their mobility and daily living. Therapy. Without any further ado, we are so tickled pink to get you back on the show, my good friend. And throughout the weeks, we'll pass by information. I know yesterday you emailed me about the whole CERN angle, and I've been covering CERN now for quite some time. I've had the leading probably CERN researcher on my program numerous times, Anthony Patch. That's a whole other different rabbit hole. But tell us about this story about getting out of Paris, man. And I'll continue to keep you and your family in prayers. But that's awesome that you were able to get out before the crackdown.
Yeah, well, I had a good source in the Ministry of the Interior who told me that morning, basically, that it was coming, the lockdown was coming, and that it would be announced later on in the day. So I took the decision there and then to basically get into the car and get the hell out of Paris, because we've been talking about this for a long time, researching what is now here. I've been researching this for a long time, and I knew that once we get into a situation of what is effectively martial law, it rarely ends. I mean, I'm sure at some stage they will relax the restrictions, but I think a lot of the restrictions will remain, and it's not even clear when this will end, this lockdown. So I think because of the threat of an economic collapse after this, you could easily, or terrorist attack could be used to make the lockdown permanent. And the worst place to be in a situation of martial law is the city, because you are completely dependent on bank machines and supermarkets, and you have absolutely no freedom. Whereas if you are in the countryside, you can still walk in the forest. They can't control everything, even though they have drones now. You have to be careful. Right. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but they have informers. I mean, there are informers going around. I've seen them. I've seen people, taking photographs of other people who are breaking the rules. Like, for example, walking on the beach, which they banned. I could see people going down.
Yeah, same here in the States. Yeah. My home state of New Jersey, banning people walking on boardwalks. Crazy.
Yeah, crazy stuff. And it's obviously, these are, I mean, nobody picks up a bug in the beach. I mean, the beach is probably the safest place to go whenever there's a virus or flu, going around. Sea air it's probably the best place you can go to stay healthy. and sea water and sea air, and the fact that they're banning people going on the beach is proof that this has nothing to do with public health. This is really an exercise. This is a social control exercise, and I think they want to maximize the social control during this exercise to basically see how far they can go, how far,
I agree.
how much people will take before they actually get to the streets, on the streets, and kind of say, right, that's enough. I mean, in France, this country is in revolt. It's been in revolt for the last year with the Yellow Vest movement all over the country. The biggest social revolt in modern French history. The country was on the brink of revolution before this happened, and now, basically, conveniently, people are not allowed to leave their house. So I think the purpose of this exercise is to, as I say, to see how far they can go in terms of social panic and trauma. Because once you've traumatized the citizen is completely under your control. You first traumatize them, scare the hell out of them, ramp it up to the maximum, and then once they come up with a solution,
vaccines,
which they may, of course, the vaccines, and then the populace will accept anything, and right now that's essentially what's going on. In France, we have a researcher. The top microbiologist in France is called Didier Raoult, and Didier Raoult was basically he is without question the most distinguished microbiologist in France, if not the world, and the kind of authority everybody went to in France for years for everything to do with bacteria and viruses and so on. And they've been using hydroxychloroquine for a long time. And when he suggested that would be the best treatment, it's cheap, it's effective, it does no real side effects, and they've been using it for years. The media attacked him straight away. It was actually presented as fake news, and he was just completely attacked for about 24 hours. All kinds of stories were put out in the mainstream press here. You heard about the fish water story to do with Donald Trump, some guy who drank fish water and so on. That story was put out, and this basically, for over a week, we just had social media and alternative media talking about the censorship, basically, of the solution to the problem, which is a very simple, cheap, and effective solution to a problem, of course, which I think, and I'm not an expert, but from what I gather from experts, people like Dr. Vodarg, who was the director of the Council of Europe for medical research, it's basically just the flu. The coronavirus is just a flu virus. It's one of the it's one of the thousands, maybe millions, I don't know. But there are many, many different viruses, and they're just scrap pieces of DNA going around our system. And viruses are part of our internal microorganism. They're part of the body, essentially, and they're no big deal. They can in this case, this is no big deal anyway. I mean, there are other diseases like Ebola, which was a really frightening disease. But the doctors, I've listened to people like Dr. Vodarg say that it's really just a normal flu virus, and that it's no big deal. They've all been censored in the media. He was attacked in the German media, completely demonized for saying that. And the interesting thing about those two doctors, that is the top French doctor and the top German doctor, both specialists in their field, the two European specialists, is that they both have the authorities, the World Health Organization, of being under the influence of pharmaceutical corporations. They have both denounced the conflict of interest of power and pharmaceutical corporations. And that's, I don't think, a coincidence.
Yeah, here's some of the latest here, folks. I'm on Twitter as you were speaking there, and I retweeted some of your information. Great stuff you're putting out. And I want you to speak about this, but it seems like, as my previous guest for today, David Icke is presenting. We've got a whole bunch of people going into some of these hospitals where they say, it's overflowing, full of patients or whatnot, and they're empty. There's nothing really going on. It's quite interesting.
No.
Listen to this, folks. Maryland is now on lockdown, starting as of 8 p.m. today. That is a new Twitter hashtag trend. So it looks like people in Maryland now are on lockdown. I've been on lockdown now for at least 4 days or so. But go ahead. I felt like you wanted to jump in there, buddy. Yeah, I mean, a lot of deception here. Not only
sure, a lot of people are putting out videos all over the world of hospitals that are practically empty. Ambulances that are not, out on the road, but are basically parked up. The thing about this is, when it comes to the actual information, you'll always talk to somebody who knows a doctor who told them that, it's really serious and that they're working 24/7. And this is kind of what happens. You'll hear all kinds of contradictory stories and information. But the fact of the matter, this I've said before, because I think in the last interview we talked about coronavirus as well, when it was kind of just in China and was coming to Italy. This is a bioweapon, and I don't mean that the virus is a weapon. I mean that it's a weapon in the sense it's a crisis that is part of a war on the public. The way it is a pretext for police state measures. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, the virus is a weapon. The virus itself is, I think, pretty much not a big deal. Mm-hmm. That's my view. I might be wrong, but it doesn't. No, I agree with you. It seems to me that I would trust people like Vodar and Wout more. I would trust people approved by the Macron government. Because of what I know about the corruption in the Macron government, and so on and so forth, and the media. So the weapon here is the police state measures that the belief in the virus permits. And I think the point I made in my article here is that the real virus and the real danger for everyone is the infantilization of the public mind. I made that kind of point that mm-hmm. to get into heaven in Christianity, you have to be like a child. You have to have the innocence of a child. But in a sense, we sort of have the sort of perverse version of that. To sort of survive in the New World Order, you have to have the naivety of a child to believe everything the government's telling you. Yes. And that ultimately what you end up being is a spoiled. And that hence the social justice warriors, all the leftists, what they are spoiled brats, badly brought up children, and they behave like children. And the only way to talk to them is to sort of use the kind of language you would use to talk to a spoiled child, but you can see sort of how they're running around now, and they just sort of love this. They love sort of, the opportunity to appear virtuous. So it's all sort of self-righteous police state stuff. There's been a lot of videos of, criticizing people for breaking the rules. I hear this. It's awful, but it's not surprising, of course. I mean, I said in the article as well, and I'm as skeptical as you are about Donald Trump, but that one of the reasons, and we said it before, one of the reasons why we're supposed to hate Donald Trump is precisely for the good things that he may do, or the good things that he's perceived to be doing. So in other words, there is a sense in which, if Trump could, like for example, when Trump supports the pro-life movement, these are the reasons why we're supposed to hate him, and these are the real reasons. I don't know about QAnon. I'm open-minded. I really hope and pray that that's a true conspiracy theory. I don't know, but I've been waiting for this kind of. What makes me skeptical about QAnon is that I don't believe really at this stage that we deserve a savior, as in a politician. Mm-hmm. I don't really think that we've done anything to get off the hook
Right.
It just doesn't seem to me to add up. That's, I think in a way that we're, the iniquity in the world is really so bad that we do kind of deserve what's coming. It is justified in a way.
Yeah, but don't tell that to Cardinal Brandmuller, and don't tell that to Cardinal Marx, because they think that this whole pandemic or seemingly pandemic is not a chastisement by God. It's just kind of arbitrary, I guess. Again, these modernists, and this is very interesting. Again, I retweeted this article here on Saint Corona and Christian world government. So talk to us about how the drive for world government is uniquely European. Talk to us a little bit more about Saint Corona of Damascus and your research. Again, this is really a wonderfully laid out article. Talk to us a little bit more about this, Gearóid.
Well, I suppose there are so many saints in Christian hagiography, and that it wasn't surprising to find that there was actually a Saint Corona. And I'm not so sure about the epidemics. I'm not sure if that's correct. I did read it on Sensus Fidelium. It's just a fairly good source that and I trust them, but I'm not so sure. Right. Nonetheless, the story is interesting about Saint Corona, because if you look at the period in which to explain who she was a Syrian woman who was martyred in Syria, in Roman-governed Syria, and she came to there was another soldier. We're not sure whether it was her husband or not. But another soldier called Victor was also tortured and murdered for his belief in Christianity. And they were, she was, according to legend, according to the story, she was basically torn between two palm trees. I'm not sure how they did that, but she was tortured to death between two palm trees. And, in the Middle Ages, around the time of Otto III, the Attonian dynasty in the Holy Roman Empire, when the Charlemagne, first of all, in the 8th century, sort of revived the Roman Empire, and that was Francia, and the French have had this relationship with Rome since the baptism of Clovis, the first French king, and then the birth of the French nation. And there's a sort of a mystical union between the notion of France and the notion and the Roman Catholic Church. So I was trying to basically situate the story from a French perspective, because Otto III was a Holy Roman emperor. He basically tried to revive Charlemagne's empire about a century after. And at that period, you had a lot of anti-popes. You had a very corrupt clergy. You had Rome, which was pretty much in tatters, and you had a period where there were, it was the secular power, essentially, that saved Rome at the time. The secular, Otto III got rid of the anti-pope and put a great pope in charge. And, I mentioned the second pope during his reign, which is Sylvester II. He's one of the most, intelligent men of his time. He was a great scientist, a great philosopher, astronomer. This was a period when the church was again, saved. But the kind of point I'm trying to make, I suppose, is that, we are in that kind of a period now as well. We're in a period of cultural and moral decline. And, with Pope Francis, we have a pope who basically, I made the point that he sort of believes that Gethsemane is God instead of, Christ. He's running around Gethsemane half asleep. It's kind of like we're at that point in as the church is going through the Passion. We're at that point of kind of cultural decline and catastrophe. But the point I was trying to make, the culture that venerated Corona was the culture of Otto III in the 9th and 10th century. And, around 1000 AD, he brought their remains to Aachen, where a lot of the Holy Roman emperors were crowned, and it was the seat of the Holy Roman Empire at the time. And her relics were venerated. And there's a beautiful monastery in Italy, in Feltre, in Italy, dedicated to her. And, it was built by the Crusaders. It was venerated by many kings throughout the centuries. And it's, in my view, one of the most beautiful monasteries in Europe. It's right up on top of the mountain. And, I was trying to kind of also make the point that, symbolically, this crown, corona, it means crown, and virus, it means poison, And so the title of the article was Poison Crown, because it seems to me that, we know that Satan is the prince of this world, but Christ is the king, and Satan wants the crown. And ultimately, this is the religious meaning of what's happening. That the whole world is talking about the crown, and there's something at a moment in which also the church is almost gone. Peter has left; he's fled. And there's kind of pandemonium in the garden as we go through the Passion. And so it seems that this, for me, is very much sort of eschatologically linked to our time, to the fact that Easter is soon coming, and
churches are closed.
The churches are closed. Yeah, I mean, like there is no church anymore. Almost, it's gone. Peter has fled. He's not going to be there in Calvary. And so there's a kind of sense in which, it just seems to me there's something very symbolic about what's going on.
Yeah, I want to add a point to this, and I should have sent this out to you. I sent it out to some other anti-Zionists or people exposing the New World Order. But listen to how Gearóid summarizes this, folks. Listen to this. Satan is the prince of this world, the virus, the poison in men's souls. We will have world government in time. The question is, who will wear the corona, Satan or Christ the King? So we know that this New World Order, and on the religious side of things, we know it's coming through the Vatican II sect, essentially the cult of man or whatnot. But there was a recent article put out by one of the top rabbis. His name is Rabbi Lippo, and he was drawing allusion to how the coronavirus, and speaking to the crown portion again, points to how the Jewish Messiah needs to come onto the scene like right now and basically put an end to this. So here he's calling for who we would call the Antichrist. So we know that the Antichrist from Catholic tradition is going to be a king. He'll literally be a monarch. He will be a king. He will rule from Jerusalem. He will rebuild the third temple. I mean, all this stuff is right in front of us, folks. It's not like a decade or so away. But you had some of these top rabbis, and so I wanted to present that to you. But then I also wanted to remind our listening audience, as I know you know this as well. Satan will have a short reign, right? With the reign of the Antichrist being 3.5 years. The church teaches us. But then after that, in my humble opinion, this is where we'll get the triumph of the Immaculate and Sacred Hearts. So Jesus Christ will have his reign back in the world socially. But this is wonderfully written, folks. I mean, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna copy and paste this, and we'll obviously reference yourself. But we got to get this up so everyone can see it on the website. Very, very well done. Any other? Go ahead.
Yeah, just on that point there that you made about the rabbis, I mentioned in the article, and I've mentioned it many times before, and it's highly significant that the main oligarch in France, a member of B'nai B'rith, a former advisor to many governments, particularly François Mitterrand in the 1980s, Jacques Attali, he is if you like, he's the sort of Henry Kissinger of France. And he's the man who created Macron. He is the guy who promoted him. He took him under his wing and, pretty much designed Macron's entire career. And, he has said openly and categorically that he wants to see a world government with its capital in Jerusalem, according to the Jewish Talmudic tradition. And he hasn't hidden that. He's also said, he wrote in his book in 2009, that a global pandemic would enable the formation of a world government. So they're not hiding this fact. I mean, the thing about it is, what people need to understand is they know that there really isn't much opposition to their plans. And so they're not really hiding it. What they do with the media is they try to just get you to forget about it. They call people who say it nutters and conspiracy theorists and so on. Mm-hmm. But, they themselves talk about this openly. I mentioned that, in the article talking about event 2000 what was it, 2001. 2001. Mm-hmm. I mean, all the videos are there. They're not hiding it. It's a simulation, and then the simulation happens, and we see this over and over and over again with false flag attacks, they very often happen when the simulation is underway. And afterwards, because you're not allowed to ask questions, it's okay. They're sort of basically laughing at us. I mean, if you probably saw Bill Gates on CNN there recently, and he basically he seemed to be biting his lip. He couldn't stop himself from laughing. The guy was like elated. So I'm sure he's got plenty of room to walk around, Bill Gates. I doubt if he's living in a cardboard box of a house,
Right.
and worrying if he's going to have a job when this is over and if he's going to be able to pay the bills and feed his family. I doubt it very much. So obviously, Bill is quite happy with the whole thing, and these people are getting ready for a global centralized government, and they're saying it openly. We've seen the former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, saying we need a world government to deal with the crisis, and this is what we're going to be listening to now for the rest of the year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The importance of a world government, the need for a world government, and so on and so forth. And I think that St. Thomas Aquinas talks about the legitimacy of revolt. That Catholics are torn between the idea that we have to be obedient and that that it's not justified to rebel. And the passage in the Summa Theologicae where he talks about revolt. I was just reading it again the other day. I think it's section 42, where he talks about sedition and revolt. And there's a wonderful passage there where he explains, that when the elites, when the ruling class, it basically rules only in its own interest against the public good, then it is justified to revolt. And we're in that. This is the moment we're in.
Now, I was about to ask. I mean, how much longer do we get to that point? I mean, here in America, again, a lot of states going on lockdown. I mentioned Maryland. This doesn't seem like it's going to go away. We're now prognosticating, or many are prognosticating, this will end up, early summer in the very least when we're released from these lockdowns. But you got Italy in complete revolution right now. You already mentioned France. All the countries, and then also you sent me an article at the beginning of the month. India. Well, I just went on Twitter today, and they're beating people out with sticks in the open for who are breaking the lockdown. I mean, they're well underway. Yeah, so it's like, my goodness, this could be a very bloody year.
Well, it will be. I think that we need to take look at some other factors here, variables like, for example, the migration crisis. Just before this happened, we had a situation where we had a second and major flow coming from Turkey. You had Erdogan threatening to send, hundreds of thousands more migrants into Europe, basically. Now, I was at conferences in Paris with government officials, French government officials, who were, for the first time, admit that migrants were being used as weapons. This was the kind of language I couldn't believe my ears, listening to former directors of French secret intelligence agencies, government officials, all now talking about migrants being weapons. This is the kind. This was a few weeks ago. Now these migrants are still flowing into Europe. There's been no control, certainly not in France. So we're still having people coming in, and these people are in quarantine. So you have a situation where the domestic populations in quarantine has been imprisoned, and then we don't really know who's coming in here. Then you have people being released from the jails. We had thousands of people being released from the jails. So again, we don't know where they're going to go and what they're going to do. So you have that situation going on as well, where you could, if you have an economic crisis, then you could have, obviously you will have a major revolt. So the only way they're going to be able to stop that is to maybe, continue the lockdown or come up with some other scam. That could be, who knows, Ebola. It could be something even more terrifying. And why not? Why not try an Ebola thing? I mean, they could go into overdrive in the media.
Bird flu.
And bird flu, anything. I mean, they could. The thing about it is, why should they stop now? If you were the dictator, of the world dictator now, why would you stop? I mean, everybody's basically in quarantine. Everybody believes it. at least the vast majority of the population believe it. The only risk is that it would backfire if they push it too far. People might begin to, I mean, there is at the same time a significant underground rebellion. I mean, people are not that stupid. I mean, they are able to do rudimentary research on the internet, and they can find, even though they're deleting all these videos and so on, nonetheless, pretty much everybody knows now about the chloroquine thing. In fact, it has been approved by Macron now, so he seems to be following Trump now. So, I don't know what's going to happen in the United States.
Yeah, they would
have
to come up with...
What do you think is going to happen now?
Yeah, they would have to come up with a new routine. I mean, now that it's obvious that there is something outside of a vaccine that has 100% success rate, they gotta come up with something new. I've seen the predictive programming that's going to be bird flu, which is going to kill millions, not this coronavirus thing. So I've always said this was sort of like a trial balloon, to where they get everything in place, ramp up the vaccine agenda, the surveillance state, drones in the air, and kind of all that stuff. And then, we'll find a solution to this as it seemingly we have already. And then something new will pop up. Bird flu is what I've seen.
I think that for a major, to bring in this is an exercise. It's kind of like a prelude, and they want to do it to the maximum. And once they lift the containment, then they'll sort of analyze it and create a new consensus, a bit like 9/11. Afterwards you sort of create a new consensus. You create the myth, you drum it into people. And then, they can probably try out a lot of technology now, like drones. How effective are drones at surveying the entire population? Should we allow people to go into their gardens, or should we control that as well? And so they're going to kind of take stock, I think, after this, and then sort of, prepare better for the next one. But we could be looking at, in the next 10 years, more, various lockdowns. I don't know how much time we have. I mean, you just mentioned it at the start. We don't have time to talk about it now. But you mentioned CERN and what's going on there. And I sent you something about yesterday. And it's just, I don't understand any of that. It's way over my head. But it's like, it's I did see that video of the tunnel that was opened in Switzerland. A couple of years ago on RT. And I mean, how in your face can they get in terms of Satanism, just openly? And so it's deeply sinister. Why the hell would you have a scientific research center based in Europe? These people are supposed to be, scientific materialists, rationalists, and they've got statues to Shiva.
Yeah, Shiva, goddess of death.
Yeah. Why would you? I mean, if you're a scientist and you don't believe in all the superstition, why do you need that kind of symbolism? Why not something more positive than Shiva? It's
why not Ronald McDonald, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Most of the public, I didn't know much about CERN. I still don't understand what they're doing down there, but it is colossal. There is one thing that I've been thinking about for a long time, and it's a topic for another discussion, but which is that the sort of the demonic element in advanced technology, and it seems that as I mentioned that in my article, I think that we're living in the hyper intelligence era, and so we live in an extremely intelligent world. Like, we can make all this technology, but we've banished logos, we've banished, and so there is a war. Intelligence is waging a war on reason, and that seems to be the kind of paradigm of the end times, that sort of technology and the demonic have merged in a sense, and it seems to be, in Catholic theology, as you know better than I mean, there is an entire discipline called demonology that we've probably not studied enough. The hierarchy of demons and how the realm of demons works. And we know very, very little about it because, we don't talk about that in our culture. And but it's, when you look at the history of science, you see these people like John Dee, and, the obsession if you like, that a lot of scientists in the past had with black magic and the sort of the Faustian complex, and it seems to me that we're seeing that now in high technology.
Yeah. We're there, buddy. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time, and we appreciate all that you do. Like I said, I'm going to link this article to the podcast so everyone could read it first and then, get to the podcast and have a listen in. But we appreciate all that you do. It's now time for some shameless self-promotion time before we let you go. And hang off air here for a second. We'll get you scheduled for next month as well. So I've only got a few dates here left, and I want to make sure I get you on next month. So we'll make that happen. So shameless self-promotion time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, GOC News should get you to my website. It's easier than gearoidoccolmáin.org. So GOC News, Broadford Soviet is the Twitter account. So that's all really. Please help my work.
Yes.
Please donate if you can, and contact me, and hopefully I'll have more information for you next month.
Yeah. No, you undoubtedly will. You did a great job with this article, and I just want to thank those who continue to support our guests in terms of getting them onto the Tradcatknight Apostolate, so that our guests can, basically get an overall feel as to what we're covering in general. I wanted to say that and close. And then just last but not least, for those who missed the podcast with David Icke, perhaps you're listening to this one first. I've had to reschedule Brother Nathaniel. Everyone should know him, one of the top anti-Zionist, anti-New World Order experts, if you will, Russian Orthodox priest, if I'm not mistaken, not priest, brother clergy, but he's on lockdown in Phoenix somewhere, and he said that we would have to reschedule. So sometime in April, we'll make that happen, folks. And I just want to thank you all for tuning in to Tradcatknight special guest exclusive podcast for this March the 30th, 2020. Until next time, stay safe and God bless.